All right, all right. It is 7:04. I apologize for the delay. I was just getting my screen set up here, but it being 7:04 and this being the July 11th, 2023 hearing of the Zoning Board of Appeals, I'm going to read the preamble. One may watch or participate remotely with a meeting link that can be found at, providing a URL below, which I will now read. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This meeting may be recorded, which will be made available to the public on Wacom as soon after the meeting as is practicable. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance, if allowed, or by accessing the meeting remotely as noted above. We request public comment be limited to 2 minutes per person. Everyone in attendance should be aware that face masks are now optional for town buildings according to the new face covering guidance dated February 24th, 2022, also providing URL below, which I will not read. And with that, I open the July 11th ZBA hearing. It is 7:05. And for the record, it appears we have in the room here, Mr. Sarian, Mr. Levine, myself, the chair, Joshua Wernig, and online it appears we have Mr. Hirsch, I did see, as well as Mr. Grumbeck. And let me just check here. I believe Ms. Janice is trying to join as we speak. And I'm just going to go.
Mr. White is in Europe.
Mr. White is in Europe, and Mr. Fitzpatrick likewise is traveling for work and will not be here. So I think we have the people that we have, with the exception of Aida, who appears to be in attendance. Can we elevate her from the attendees list to the panelists before we get going here? And she's calling me as well, temporarily. We're elevating you now. Thank you. It sometimes is, isn't it? Right. Thank you. Okay, wonderful. But while we wait for Ms. Janice to be elevated, I am just going to get back to the agenda. I see no reason not to take public comment at this time. We're accepting public comment as it relates to items that are not on the agenda. So if anybody has public comment for anything that's not on the agenda, we are happy to hear that at this time.
Okay.
And I don't see anybody in the room interested in speaking. Anybody attending remotely interested in saying anything for public comment? All right. Seeing nothing. The next item, we'll close public comment and move on for the review and accept of minutes. And this has review accept minutes of May 30th, 2023, June 1st, 2023, and June 8th, 2023. But Manny, which ones do we have actually in front of us? All three of those. We have all three of those in front of us. All right. Did everybody have a chance to review those? And I know, Jim, you had forwarded some revisions.
On June, I think June 1st and
It was 8th and 13th that he did.
Okay.
is it May 30th and June 8th? Two of the three.
Okay. And I didn't get a chance to review your revisions there, Jim. Were they substantive?
No,
Okay.
I don't believe in those. No, they were very good, just
Okay.
a few minor nits.
Wonderful. You always have good nits, so I do appreciate that. Anybody else have, well, first of all, let's go around the room. Did everybody have a chance to review those?
Yeah, I reviewed this.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Aida, yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Hirsch?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Any comments, questions, discussion?
Good as drafted. I did not have a chance to review Jim's revisions, but as he mentioned, they're ministerial, should be okay.
Wonderful. I'd move that we accept all three minutes. We don't have to do that as separate votes, do we? Okay, we'll do that. It's subject to Jim's revisions.
I'll second it if Adam hasn't already done it.
I have
Mr.
not done
Levine
it.
actually jumped in, showing his leadership. Thank you very much. We will take this and
Big with it.
roll. We'll take the roll call here. We'll start online. Mr. Grumbeck?
Yes.
Mr. Hirsch,
Aye.
Ms. Janice,
Aye.
Mr. Sarian. Aye. Mr. Levine.
Aye.
Myself, the chair, Joshua Warnick. Aye. You guys have it. We will accept those minutes. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. This is really discussion for additional administrative support from the town and member recruitment efforts. And I will open up that discussion. And I do encourage everyone to participate here on the board. As far as member recruitment, we have had graciousness from both Mr. Brumback and Mr. Fitzpatrick to continue well beyond their what they had envisioned. And I guess, I have had discussions with the Board of Selectmen in the past in the town. We do need help in recruiting, and anybody that's listening here, I plan to continue the call for volunteers to step forward and show their interest. These are appointed positions. Really would look for people that might be interested to submit letters of interest to the select board, and because we do have 2 spots that are effectively open at this juncture, and we would, Mr. Brumback has agreed to, in the past, to stay on until those are filled. And Mr. Fitzpatrick, I can't speak for his willingness to, and for how long he's willing to continue either, but I do think that, we need help, from the town. So I will pass this along, if to the extent the select board or the town is not present to hear my call, but Manny's raising his hand, so you want to be recognized?
Yes, I know I have gotten a email in the past few weeks about a potential interested member. I pointed him to the direction of town clerk and selectman's office, so that might be coming in.
I do know that there was one individual that I believe was going to be interviewed by the select board as of last night. I have not heard the status of.
Yeah, I don't know where that stands right now, but I do know that there was someone.
But we continue to have open positions. And until there's a butt in the seat, I think that the call still goes out, and it's not just one that we need 2, but you're well put though. You being a resident here, Manny, maybe perhaps you want to step up and join us.
Yeah, you'd be a professional.
You would know more than us. Also, I think, I've taken comments that various individuals have provided relative to some of the admin support. I think that is a very worthy conversation, and I think some of the concerns are well put. We have, I've had direct conversations both with Mike McCall as well as the building commissioner to discuss, the concerns and the request for additional support. I know we have limited but excellent administrative support, but the hours that are allocated are not sufficient to serve our purposes, I think. And we need additional support, not only from just being able to, process some of this, but also I think some of the concerns are relative to just gatekeeping. Some of these applications aren't ready to come before the board. And I think we've had conversations with the building commissioner, asking the building commissioner to look into that a little bit with a more of a keen eye, but also to provide us, some more guidance on perhaps where in the bylaws we might start with our analysis. If he believes this might be a section whatever case, then that might be helpful to hear from the building commissioner of being a volunteer board to get some sort of guidance where certainly we can go beyond that guidance. We should, but be able to get some help and point in the direction of where we might start. So, yeah, please, Mr. Levine.
Aida and/or Jim, a question for you based on that point. Can you share with me, as the newest member of the board, maybe in prior administrations with former building commissioners, what you were provided in the past in terms of what the chair was referencing, more specific guidance regarding the code and our town bylaws? How was that provided, and how was that helpful or not?
Mr. Levine, I can talk to that directly. The prior commissioner did provide us such guidance and typically provided us a brief synopsis email to the board that provided, you know, the initial feedback from the
For each
building
case.
commissioner for each case. And so we would get 2 to 3 sentences, maybe sometimes more if it was more complex, but it summarized basically where the case had been for the commissioner. But also perhaps, you know, different, if you could see this case and as a such and such case, or you could look at it from this perspective and provided a little bit of an unbiased, you know, at least understanding of maybe lenses for which we might be able to look at and evaluate the case, which was extremely helpful because being a volunteer board, we are not, I know I am not, I mean, I might be an attorney, but I am not a zoning attorney. That is not my area of expertise. And in becoming familiar, and especially for the newest members, and I am a rather new member myself,
The good one.
Mr. Sari, you were too kind. But I'm still coming up to speed, still trying to become facile with the zoning bylaws here and understand, you know, those pieces, because it goes beyond not only zoning bylaws, but it also gets into, you know, some of the state laws and case law and such. And so we do have a resource if we ask through the town manager to get access to town council, but that can be cumbersome. And sometimes getting some direct, some indications, maybe some prompting to which parts of the bylaw we might want to look at and prep ourselves on in advance of a particular case is extremely helpful.
Would the building commissioner engage with you at the meetings as well if you had follow-up questions to what was written?
Yeah, I speaking to, the experience that I had, and listen, I don't mean to monopolize the discussion here, and Aida and Jim, please jump in. But
Whenever you're done, we will.
Yeah, well,
You go ahead.
right off, the legal description contained the sections of the bylaw that should be considered right off the bat, so that the public was aware of what sections there were to be considered.
Aida, but that was problematic in of itself, because even during that time with our prior building commissioner, it was just restated. It was never specific, as far as it was never tailored to the particular case. It was always, it's under these general sections.
Yes,
And I think
that was, so I agree,
that's-
that was a problem, but the prior two, the prior two building commissioners stated which sections of the bylaw were applicable. And that was extremely helpful because, again, as you stated, I'm not sure if there is a zoning attorney or a land use attorney on the board now, but
Not since Mr. Huber left.
right. And it is very useful to have the building commissioner, who is the expert on the building code, on the zoning bylaw, to state which are the sections that should be considered. And perhaps the board might look at a section and question whether it could be considered as well. But it's, it would be in the legal description. So it's right there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you say, Ms. Jennison, and certainly I don't have experience with the prior two building commissioners. And I know, Mr. Larson might not have tailored the individual descriptions, but we would get that email like the day before or the day of or a week before, but we'd get that email that kind of helped us and put us in those spots. So we did get that feedback with the prior commissioner. Now, we only recently have asked this of the new building commissioner. And, in the spirit of partnership, I think we need to allow him to absorb our comments and constructive feedback and come forward and, see what he can provide, So I'm not sure it's I think the feedback, and that's the purpose and the spirit of this conversation, is to partner with the building department and partner with the building commissioner. Because I think that he's interested, he's expressed that he's interested in providing us what we need. But again, I think that's the spirit of this conversation.
I have a few comments, and
Please.
this is not meant to be critical to anybody. Please understand that. And I'm going to break them into 4 different areas. The first is the commissioner. And I go back to 1999 when I started. I've been with several building commissioners, and I have not been the chair much of the time. And in my experience, a lot of the back and forth with the commissioner was with the chair. So I can't speak to everything, but I think in the past, it was important for the chair to be able to communicate with the building commissioner. And that may be working fine now. I don't know, but that's just an important aspect. And I also know that some of the other members want to be able to communicate with the building commissioner. I remember years ago, we had discussions about fences and whether they were structures, and we went back and forth. And I must say, I didn't always agree with the building commissioner, but going back and forth helped to, give us an exchange of views, and hopefully we learned a little from each other. Secondly, there have been times with building commissioners when there were enforcement problems in terms of claims by residents, and the board didn't really understand it. And it became difficult to deal with those cases unless the commissioner came and spoke to us or gave us his or her view of things. So when there are enforcement issues, we don't really understand it, and it's important for there to be a robust exchange of information. The second issue is minutes. When I started in 1999, the members actually had to take turns writing minutes, and that was horrible. And thank you to the town for finding, it within the economics to have an employee do the minutes. It's been great. There have been times, though, when we've really gotten behind, and it makes us look not great, and it puts us into open meeting law risk. So that's something that I think we need on a regular basis from the town. And certainly I appreciate it. And it's very helpful to have one of us, me or somebody else, get the minutes in advance and go over them and at least make some revisions. But generally, they've been terrific in quality. The next is agendas. We've had times in the past that the agendas have come out at the last minute. I don't think that's happening right now, and I appreciate it. But there are also times that the agendas have errors. And typically, I think the agenda goes to the chair. And we've had open meeting law complaints, and we've had problems which have cost legal fees and embarrassment. And there needs to be coordination between the building department staff and the chair in terms of the agendas, just to make sure everything's in order. And if it's done a little in advance, that might help things move along. The fourth item is residents, complaints, delays. We recently got a letter from a very involved resident. I don't question anybody's motives, but the resident was basically saying, we've dragged our feet, we're slowing things down. The zoning board is really missing its opportunity. We have tried very hard to schedule extra meetings when necessary. We're still dealing with the residue of COVID, scheduling, economics, etc. I just want to make it clear, I think the board works very hard. I think the town employees in the building department work very hard. Nobody is trying to be derelict in their duties, but things take time. There are some things that take a while for scheduling because of matters that the public doesn't see. And I would simply ask the public to understand that we are a volunteer board. We do our best. We try and, operate efficiently. I will say this, our current chair has been very good about organizational matters and dealing with a lot of issues, as well as business life and home life. And I'm thankful to our chair, who's already been in his position for more than 2 years. And I'm thankful for the other members of the board. And I'd just like to explain to the public, hey, we certainly screw up. That's the way it is, but we try our best. So thanks a lot.
I appreciate those comments, Jim. What I would say is, as far as the agendas are concerned, I know that's been a concern in the past. That's been phenomenal as of late. I appreciate that. And Manny, I know the hard work you put in, the hard work that, with limited hours that you end up putting in, and you're dragged in so many different directions. And, and certainly our comments here today aren't relative to your quality. I mean, we are lucky to have you, and we just want more of it. We want more cowbell. I mean, that's what we want. And I think that's the request to the town, is to get more of that resource. You've done incredible work to be able to turn around the minutes and the other pieces as timely, especially given the number of special meetings and that we've called as of late. And I do find it ironic, and I'm a little bit unsure, Jim, what about the specific complaint or delay and whether that was recent. I would find that ironic if it were recent, given the number of meetings that we've called over the last couple months here, and just the enormous efforts of the board members to attend those meetings and to be available for those special meetings. So I also would like to thank the entire board for just their devotion to making sure that we get these in and keep the agenda moving. But I do think, and I wanted to address the minutes, and I think I did, but you've done an incredible job, Manny, turning those around. They've been like bang, bang, bang. We've had several meetings in each week. This is another week in which we will have 2 zoning board meetings, hearings tonight, as well as later this week on Thursday, I believe. So we do appreciate that. And Aida, I think your comments are very well placed too. I mean, whether it would be great if it were in the actual description, because that would call attention for the public as well to, kind of the areas of the zoning bylaws in which we might be operating. And I think that's probably the most appropriate place for that commentary to occur, which is way up front. But certainly, at least we would want some sort of feedback from the building commissioner in advance, a sentence or 2 sentences, just to put us in the ballpark. The board sometimes struggle, and we waste a lot of time, just trying to figure out where the heck and how the heck and in which standard under which we are trying to analyze a particular case. And I think if we got a little bit of that feedback, just a little bit more, we might be able to accelerate even further our agenda, and better serve, our constituents.
So putting them in the legal description sets out for us where we need to be looking. It also ensures that where we are looking is appropriate and we are not guessing at any point. And we have a board here that has some veterans on it and some newer members. But again, we are not experts in the bylaw, and considering that this is affecting people's lives, people's homes and lives and finances, and we want to be considerate in applying the bylaw as is appropriate to see how applicants see how this can apply to an applicant's petition and what can be done to address it. That guidance should be coming from the building commissioner. And again, there was a time where we were being, where there were quite a number of lawsuits coming to the board. And having this laid out for us is incredibly important. Having a generalization that it could be, you could address articles and listing 4 or 5 different articles is not giving the board enough guidance for which to address things. And if a chair becomes somebody who is not an attorney who has not studied the bylaw, then the chair is generally leading the meeting and leading the discussion. That's putting the chair at a disadvantage as well. So again, until the until the last building commissioner who just retired from here, the commissioners before addressed the sections of the bylaw in the legal description. The legal description is published in the newspaper. Well, it was published in the town crier. It's published somewhere. And it is the vehicle for addressing the application. I feel,
Yeah,
obviously, I feel very strongly about this.
Yeah, no, and you know, I think it's well placed. You know, I would also point out that the burden is on the applicants, right? It always remains on the applicants. But yes, I think it improves the process. It's important for the process. We want to be armed and as knowledgeable as possible to serve our constituents here, but we are a quasi-judicial board. You know, that is our function in adjudicating these cases and understanding under which we want to be legally correct to the extent possible. You know, when what we and how we review and analyze these cases. So I think that's important. So all those comments I think are well placed. Does anybody else have any comments or concerns?
I will add one other thing. With the prior commissioners, there were conferences between applicants and the commissioners before applications were filed. And I assume that that is still happening so that applicants are aware of what is needed as well. Applicants can always hire their own counsel, but this is always, in my experience, this has been a community in which the board has been extending, the commissioners and the board and the staff have been extending themselves to assist applicants in the knowledge that they need to help them put their application forward. So.
And I appreciate that spirit of which you say that, Ms. Janice. I just would just caution that you know, while that might be best practices and maybe that's the good thing to do, that is not our function to serve in that capacity. I mean, I always hope that people go the extra mile and help people understand the way in which they need to look at
The
their
board-
application.
Sorry, the board cannot do that. It would be on the building commissioner to be able
Yes.
to.
And again, and I think that's the proper, perhaps, thing to do, and that's what we would hope for, but I'm not sure that's, we can't promise that to people. And Manny, I know you want to be, you just had a quick comment, I think on.
Yeah, regarding that, I remember that being a note at one of the previous hearings. I have talked with the commissioner now and if someone comes with a ZB application, I always make sure they talk with him to make sure that they need the approval. Like for instance, we did have one case where they came to us, they thought they needed the approval, discussed with them, realized that they didn't need the approval. So we're trying to make that more of a practice going forward.
And I think with the transition from one commissioner to another, there's always going to be a little bit of, there's going to be a period of time where I think we need to sort out the expectations and just the interaction, what are the rules of engagement here? And I think that's the purpose of this. And we really appreciate the cooperativeness and the spirit of the cooperation that building commissioner has provided, as well as your support, that you brought directly in. So I don't think it's any lack of effort or want to be good partners. I think that I have all the confidence that, through open dialogue that we'll be able to just dial it in.
Thank you.
Good. No further conversation. I think that was exhaustive. Good. Okay, well, I guess we're on to the next discussion, which is the discussion and vote for new chair. I served, and Jim did point out that I've now served in this position for 2 years for the Town of Wayland Zoning Board of Appeals rules and regulations. All members of the board annual elect one regular member to serve as chair and a regular associate member to serve as clerk, although we haven't been doing that. But no member may serve more than 2 consecutive one-year terms as chair. Right in our rules. Now, it does have another sentence there, which I prefer not to read, but I will read it for completeness of the record. This rule can be waived for one additional year under extraordinary circumstances, such as a refusal of any other member to chair the board. We've had great leadership in the past. Mr. Grumbeck had led us for a number of years at different points in time. He came to me 2 years ago and asked me to pick up the mantle. And I think you'll remember well, Jim, I told you, well, if no one else will do it, I will do it. But I'm the reluctant chair. I do not want this. And that remains true. This is as gratifying as serving on the board is and continues to be. And I do want to, I would enjoy to continue to serve. My life, unfortunately, is just too busy. I've got 2 small ones at home. I have a very demanding job. I do not have the ability or capacity to perform the functions as chair in the manner as is necessary to discharge the services correctly for our constituents. I do not have the ability to do those in-between monitoring of email and follow-ups with building commissioner and others, and to be that point of contact. I believe it is a disservice to the town for me to continue serving as chair, given my current familial and work responsibilities. And I humbly ask for another to pick up the mantle.
So I've had a few conversations as the newest member of the board, recognizing that at one time our esteemed chair was also the newest member of the board when he stepped into that role. I mentioned to the chair that I would be happy to serve, but my strong preference is to wait at least one more year, as I really would like to gather some more substantive knowledge before assuming that role. But that I would, if anybody else, such as Mr. White, who I realize isn't here today, would step up to serve in that capacity for a year, I said I would be happy to kind of shadow him and also play that behind the scenes role, which I have done in the past for other boards, including when I served on the select board several years ago.
Did Mr. White ever indicate a willingness to serve? He's only indicated an unwillingness to me.
Mr. Grumbeck?
I spoke to Mr. White and he's away. I called him again tonight. And he is not willing to serve as the sole chair. He might be willing to serve in a hybrid capacity. And while I don't want to overstretch your responsibilities, Mr. Chairman, it strikes me there are essentially 3 different roles that you are performing. One is being the chair on the night of the meetings. One is the things back and forth in the weeks, during the weeks beforehand. And the third is doing a lot of the work that doesn't necessarily mean presiding over meetings, but it deals a lot with the bylaws and understanding of applications, et cetera. And it occurs to me that between the 3 of you, there might be a way, at least for a year, while Mr. Levine is waiting to be teed up, the 3 of you could work out some sort of compromise. I don't want to volunteer Mr. White for anything while he's not here, but he certainly understands the need, and he has expressed to me his interest in helping out without taking the mantle fully. So I would suggest we pick this back up, not 2 days from now when we have a meeting, but maybe at the next meeting.
No, I intend to push for a vote tonight. Listen, my concern continues to be the in-between pieces. I am happy to come and hit the drum and try to, in my clumsy way, push the agenda forward in as efficient a manner as I possibly can. But I do not have that time to be that in between, that contact. I think Manny probably can attest to the number of times he's called me and caught me in the fog of my professional life. And it's hard for me to switch gears and actually, it's becoming untenable for me at this time. And I think part of that has been, I've taken on and part of this has been my own choosing, but I've taken on a large responsibility for drafting decisions. And I've drafted the predominance of all the decisions in the last 2 years. And I think that's perhaps an additional piece that has been, problematic, between the communications, prepping, making sure and trying to keep in contact. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to send out reminder notices for meetings. I mean, we're all adults. We should be able to show up on meetings on time. And I know that's been a problem. I understand we're a volunteer board, but that has been a problem with this board, for attendance as well as, showing up on time. And I'm not that person. I'm not going to be that person to remind people and hold hands. But, with that said, looking at the rules, understanding, and I don't want to strong arm anybody, and I'm not comfortable with pushing forward on a vote relative to Mr. White in his absence. But understanding where Mr. Levine is, perhaps the rules and regulations provide perhaps the solution. Reading here, listen, maybe this is one of those extraordinary circumstances that everyone's refusing to become the chair. And I take up that mantle, but it does provide that we should elect a clerk. And perhaps that clerk role could serve as that intermediary, relative to if there's action items or things coming out of a meeting relative that will require communications to the building commissioner or reminders about Mullinization forms or some of those pieces. Perhaps that provides us, a path if we have a chair and a clerk, to assist the chair in that function. And perhaps that starts to give, a little bit of time, if that would be something that would be workable. Then in that instance, if people were refusing to step up as chair for this year, I again would be the reluctant chair, and I'll mention that at every single meeting, because I don't want anybody to ever forget that. But I would be happy to do that, and well, not happy, but I would be willing to do that. But with that said, I also would like to start instituting more of a round robin on decision writing, where we start to distribute that load, more equitably and, perhaps more systematically as far as schedule, next person, which I think would be a good way to do it. But I also, with that, do think those need to be reviewed. There are members here that have not had as much experience or comfort with maybe perhaps writing those decisions, and we're probably, we have 14 days to write them. That means we're gonna have less days to write them because they're gonna need to be drafted and then provided. And I'm happy to maybe start reviewing some of those and helping with those, but maybe not taking the first pen. And perhaps that eases some of that burden for me. But I would need a commitment from the board, to and that's kind of a precondition for me to pick up the mantle for one more year.
Well, I think those are great suggestions, Mr. Chair.
Easy for you. You're getting off the board, Jim.
Well, that's why my hair is gray, because I've been here so long. But I might say that I agree with you, although I don't have any problem with calling the position vice chair, because maybe it's clerk, but maybe it's more than that. And I think it's a great idea. I get the sense from Mr. Levine's prior offer that he would be interested in accepting that mantle. And I think he would be terrific. And that would be a way to get the load of all the interim duties between meetings off of your plate. The job of herding cats, the job of communicating with the commissioner and Manny and, dealing with town council if there are issues as to forms, et cetera. And I think that would be terrific. And in terms of decisions, I agree with you fully. And I will say this, when I came back onto the board, I said I would write the minutes. And thank goodness that's become much easier because Manny's doing such a great job. I'm also happy to edit decisions. I think that it's great for somebody less senior on the board to prepare the decisions, and then I will work with that person to finalize the decision. That's fine. I've written dozens of them in my tenure, and I'm happy to do that. I have not been doing it, and I'm happy to take that off of your plate.
Well, it's not that I'm not happy to maybe help edit and do some of that as well, Jim, because I am. I think the problem has been, I've made the request that, we write these decisions within 10 days and submit them to me, but that's not been happening. And I made that request when I first came on as chair, and I made it again last year. And I made it, probably at 5 different meetings, but it hasn't happened. And those decisions go in and I never even see them. No one sees them. They just get submitted by the individuals. And quite frankly, as perhaps this underscores why I'm not, I don't have the time to follow up on those issues individually and don't have the time to, address those, and that perhaps underscores some of my concern that I'm not discharging the duties as I think the town deserves. But I do think I can serve in a great capacity as an individual board member, but simply not as a chair. But with I think identifying.
I think Mr. White might fill the role of doing more of the decisions. I know he writes a lot of the decisions. I think he has a real interest in that. And if he were to be the conduit for the decisions so that, there was one person who saw them all and routed them or got a copy, that would help with consistency as well. Even though he's not a lawyer, I think he's written a lot of decisions and he certainly knows how to contact you or me or any of the other board members who are lawyers. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that feedback as well. Okay.
Well, I'd be happy to submit my name at this time to serve as clerk of the ZBA.
How about vice chair?
Well,
Well,
definitely do it.
The rules provide for clerk. I think,
Okay, good. Good.
Yeah, I think that would probably be appropriate, and you're not offended by the title.
Not at all.
Okay.
I would like to nominate Mr. Levine based on his very generous offer.
I would second.
2 seconds.
All right, I think I beat you up, Mr. Hirsch. So we'll take that by roll call vote, I suppose. Mr. Sarin? Yes, we just nominated him.
Oh, I was
clerk.
sorry, I was writing the description.
We're now voting on it.
I agree, yes.
Ms. Janice?
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch?
Aye.
Mr. Grumback?
Aye.
Mr. Levine?
Aye.
Mr. Warren, the chair, myself, aye. Wonderful. We have a clerk. So we just need a chair.
We have a holdover for now.
I'm not going to nominate myself.
I would like to nominate our current chair to continue, and I would say that a condition of his being nominated.
I don't think we need a condition, Jim. I think with the understanding that we've discussed, I think that would be fine.
Okay, with either Tom or somebody else to sort of marshal the decisions. That's fine. I think we can get somebody to fulfill that role.
I
Second,
see.
Thank you, Mr. Levine. All right, I guess we'll take this by roll call vote. Mr. Sarian,
Yes.
Mr. Levine,
Aye.
Mr. Grumback,
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch,
aye.
Ms. Janice,
Aye.
myself, the chair, nay. The ayes have it. I will.
Almost unanimous.
Thank
almost
you.
unanimous.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. God help us all. All right. So let me just get back to the agenda here. Yes,
Just to clarification, I meant to say this earlier, I don't write the minutes, we have a third party member, Erin Callahan, she's been writing it for the past year and a half.
wonderful.
So I don't want to take the credit for her work, so she is the one doing that part.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Rock.
Thank you. I didn't know that. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Okay. Topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting, if any. There are none that I'm aware of. So it being 7:50 now, it seems appropriate to open up the 7:05 application for Christopher Pearson, owner, to construct an addition on a pre-existing non-conforming lot in a non-conforming location. The property is located at 8 Lodge Road, which is in the R20 zoning district, case number 23-11. Who do we have here on behalf of the applicants?
Both myself, Christopher Pearson, and my wife, Catherine Pearson.
Welcome. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Appreciate your patience for our long-winded and spirited discussion.
Appreciate the work you guys do.
But welcome. Please tell us a little bit about what you're looking to do.
Sure. So we purchased our house here in Wayland, end of 2014. And previously we're in front of the ZBA in, I believe, August of 2016, in which case we did construction on the original 1920 home, CMU foundation. We did an expansion that involved excavating and pouring some new foundation, and then new completed structure still and up due to foundational structural issues with the home as a whole. Now that we have been in here for some number of years, there are new structural issues that are presenting with the home, namely two things that in our original plans that are here with the town, structures that were supposed to be steel were instead made with wood. So we have one 20-foot beam that was supposed to be W10 steel, and instead a 3-ply 16-inch LVL was put in place. That is deflecting currently 3/4 of an inch, and that has been getting worse over time. So we have lots of plaster damage where we have a significant amount of settling. And so part of bringing this in is to resolve that, as well as the rear of our house, which has 2 sets of patio doors, as well as large picture frame windows. There are H frames around each of those. One is steel, one is made from, I believe, 2x10s. On that side of the 2x10s, the header of that portal frame has also deflected or settled so much so that those patio doors do not open. So what we have brought is we pulled in an engineer and architects, and what we'd like to do is build an office space in the upstairs half of where that portal frame is, what's currently our dining room. And the goal there is to actually finally bring in a steel beam and use that to either, I believe we discussed potentially with the commissioner of either replacing the LVL that's failing or putting it side by side with a new support and jacking up that beam and tying those two together. And so by doing that, we're doing a lot of interior work to the house to open up and do that. And so we are in a situation with the pandemic where we've went from both of us working in offices to 2 people working from home. And so, naturally having everything open there and tying in a new office space would be very helpful. And then, of course, on the outer part of the house, we currently have a deck. I believe that deck is 12 by 27 feet. And so what we're proposing is taking a 12 by 12 section of that on the side of the patio doors, like I said, that do not open, removing those doors and having an open space to essentially a 4-season finished porch that would be heated, and taking those patio doors and moving them perpendicular to where they currently are. That way, if there's any further deflection in that area of the house, it wouldn't affect, those doors opening because they would be going to the deck in a different part.
Well,
But other than that, not changing anything outside of anywhere where there's already structure at the property. I do know that, we had asked for it and received leniency in terms of what the side setbacks are on the structure. And the one thing that I'll, point out there is that there was actually originally a garage that was on the property line, 0 feet, of setback. And one of the things that we brought to this board in constructing this is that we actually improved the setback in that way. We're still within the limit, but we came, multiple feet closer away from the property line with our new structure. This wouldn't change
this was
any of
from the
that.
prior ZBA experience. You
This-
did back in.
This from the prior
2016.
ZBA, correct? Yep. And
Understood.
I'll point out that where this deck resides and where this structure would be is not within the 15-foot side setback.
Right, and in fact, it does not appear that you're touching the side setbacks at all. And you're not touching the front setbacks
Not
at
at all.
all. And looks like you're here mainly because this is a non-conforming lot.
Yes, that's correct.
Otherwise, this would be a as of right.
As far as I understand it, yes.
And so, not changing the side or front setbacks, which are the issue, not creating any new additional non-conformities, arguably not. Let me just. So the side setback, as I'm looking at the existing plot plans, and I'm just asking for just clarification, and I see the extent of the building towards the side, 6.7 on one side, 7.9 on the other. But how far is the deck? So you're going to be adding a 12 by 12 addition, enclosed addition,
Yes.
making that part of the gross square footage on the deck, right? How close is that to the side yard setbacks?
It would be that 6.7 that you see plus the width of the garage. And I believe that that's in the original plans, but I think that garage is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 feet wide or so.
Okay.
So
So-
that would bring us to a close to 17 feet,
Over 15.
over 15 feet.
Okay, because arguably there could be an argument that if you're extending even in distance, you might be extending a non-conformity. But I think it's just important for the record that you are not increasing any non-conformities here.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want that to be clear. Okay,
Yes.
wonderful. And I see we're going from 2,292 square feet up to 2,608. Okay.
Yes, and that math is based on the size of that office area and the upstairs plus the space on the deck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was kind of trying to do the math in my head.
No problem.
I'm an attorney, so it doesn't come easily to me.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Hirsch.
Since the exterior is a 3-season and is that, does that count towards the square footage?
The intention would be to heat the space. So just for
Oh, it
for
is
sake
gonna be
of
heated.
clarity,
Okay.
It would be, yeah, four season. Yeah.
4-season.
It would.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Thank you for the clarity.
Oh, you got it.
Gotcha. Let me see, any questions or discussion from the board? Mr. Commissioner, I see you here in the audience. Did you want to be heard on this matter?
Sure. If you have like I said, like you just said, it doesn't extend the non-conformity. He's within his setbacks. The only reason is because it was a special permit from the beginning, so it kind of has to be from anything else he does, to the house.
In your view, this would be a new special permit or an amendment to the old special?
Probably an
permit?
amendment to the original,
I think
just
we
because
need
it
to
has to be
see-
added.
If that's the case, if it has to be an amendment, I think we would need to see the original special permit, because that's not in the materials that I have. Could it be
It
a
could-
brand new special
It could
permit?
be a new one, yes.
Okay, because
Yeah,
I think that
Because
might
it does
be,
have a new structure that he's adding on the deck, so
okay.
that could be.
I think would that confuse the issue? Mr. Grumbeck, or Ms. Janice, you guys been on the board far longer than I. What's your view? I mean, understanding that this was subject to a special permit, do you think we need to do an amendment here? Because
I don't think I've ever seen an amendment to a special permit in this
Okay.
instance. I think we'd grant a new one. The only
Perfect.
time I would consider it is if you have a use where, you know, there are 10 conditions and you're going to amend those, but otherwise, I think a new special permit has been our practice. I don't think there's anything wrong with an amendment. I think we just don't do it.
Well, and my concern, if it were an amendment, we don't have it before us, nor have we time to review it. We'd probably be forcing these poor applicants into a continuance.
I think makes sense to grant a new special permit. I don't think there's anything controversial in this. And I think, as you pointed out, it looks like it's over 15 feet from the sideline to
Yeah.
that new structure. So that, you know, is not even within the sideline. So it really is quite not controversial. And this is guided by the structural problem, which it's a natural event. Somebody specified the wrong thing or used the wrong thing. And I think it's a very prudent thing for the owners to do.
All right, well, Mr. Commissioner, I do appreciate that input. I think it's appropriate now to open up for public comment. I see nobody here wanting to speak on the matter. Looking in, we only have one attendee anyways in the audience no public comment. I think before we'll just constitute a panel if we're ready for discussion, unless there's further questions or clarification the board needs. Wonderful. Mr. Hirsch, please.
Were the neighbors notified of the potential change?
Yes, so the neighbors received all the communication that goes out to everybody within 300 feet in the abutters list, but I had talked to both neighbors at 6 Lodge Road and 6 Lodge Road, that's Craig and Kelly Bradford, and Todd and Amanda at 10 Lodge Road. 10 Lodge Road are the abutters that share the same style lot as us, that long non-conforming lot, and 6 Lodge Road is the corner lot. When we originally brought before the board, there was some challenge from our neighbors at 6 Lodge Road. I talked with both Kelly and Craig. They were both fine with it. Craig, in fact, is a mechanical engineer and wondered why we're not suing someone. So they seem to both be good. And if you look in the plans for 10 Lodge Road, we actually chose to put just like a high transom window on that side so that, you know, we're actually extending the privacy with them. And even talked with them as recently as earlier this week. So they would be here if they were concerned about it, but they said, you know, go right ahead.
Well, and what a perfect question, Mr. Hirsch, and thank you for that clarification. God, I should just try to strong arm you to be the chair, Mr. Hirsch. Next time. All right.
No comment.
Wonderful. And with that, I think we'll constitute a panel. Then it'll be myself, Mr. Hirsch, Ms. Janice as the full board members here, and Mr. Sarian and Mr. Levine will constitute our panel. No offense, Mr. Grumbeck.
None taken at all. Thank you.
Okay, well, wonderful. I'll open up the discussion. I mean, this, you know, is as straightforward, Mr. Levine, like you just said, as these get. I mean, the clear need to do this just from the structural issues alone, and what you've been through relative to that, I think is clear. I think it was important. That's why I wanted to ask the clarifying questions. I thought that was the case, that it was beyond the 15 feet. It kind of looked that way, but I was not finding the exact measurement quickly. So, but I think that makes it even easier that, but for, really nothing's moving out of the envelope. I mean, arguably, I guess you've got a 12 by 12 addition on the deck, which wasn't great, wasn't technically part of the envelope here. But again, that is only to the rear, which they have more than sufficient. That the rear lot line is not an issue on this peculiar lot. Not increasing the conformity. And the fact that, you reached out to your neighbors and tried to take privacy into concern, I think all makes sense. It seems to be a smart project. I applaud you for taking the opportunity to increase living area and living space. I also know what it's like to sometimes work remotely with my wife. That's why it's only sometimes, in my case. So I feel for you both.
I have been banished to the basement for now.
So for me, I'm in full support of this, and I think this is really clear. I'm not sure if the rest of the board wants to make comment, or we're ready for a motion.
I wish in this application would have indicated the percentage of the addition that doesn't exist here.
Yeah, I noted that too, Sean. Yeah.
But I mean, as far as the project goes, it's a very, very humble, simple project that, I don't think it's an improvement, good improvement for the residents. So I don't see any issues with it to.
Wonderful. Further discussion? I would move that we approve this application pursuant to the plans submitted to the board and pursuant to requirements of all other town boards.
Seconded.
Mr. Hirsch, you lost your edge.
Plans.
I did, Mr. Grumbeck. That was the first condition.
Thank you.
Seconded by Mr. Levine. We'll take it by roll call vote. Mr. Sarian. Aye. Mr. Levine.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch.
Aye.
Ms. Janice.
Aye.
Myself, the chair, aye. That passes unanimously. We have 14 days to write this decision. Do I have any volunteers to write the decision? Ms. Janice, thank you.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
that. Ms. Janice has 14 days to write that decision, at which point she will provide it to the town clerk through Manny, right? And we'll get
I'll
that.
share it with somebody before I do that.
Thank you, Ms.
I
Janice.
usually share it with you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And then you can pick it up at that time. You will record it or after the 20 day appeal period. And best of luck. I really appreciate your patience tonight, and good luck.
Thank you. Like I said, appreciate what you do. And I can also, speak to Mandy's communication, has been excellent.
Wonderful. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Feedback. Great.
That's true.
Okay.
Aida, if you could forward that to the newly elected clerk as well, I'd be grateful. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
If you could forward that to the newly elected clerk, me as well, so I could just take a look, I'd be grateful.
Okay, sure, Doug.
It'll probably take me about 2 years.
Okay, and gonna get back to the proper place. Okay. It being 8:07, we will open up the 7:10 PM continued application of Ilson Machado on behalf of Ramiro Milan, owner, to construct an addition on a pre-existing non-conforming lot in a non-conforming location. The property is located at 9 Simpson Road, which is in the R20 zoning district, case number 2310, continued from June 13th, 2023. Who do we have here on behalf of the applicant?
We have Ms. Machado, who's our contractor, and myself, who's the homeowner, and my wife, who's in the background. She's making dinner.
Welcome back.
Thank you. So we just wanted to touch base. We wanted to circle back as based on the comments by Mr. Hirsch and yourself, Mr. Commissioner, we decided to go ahead and put a second floor. But as you know, with the holiday season, we had the 4th of July break. We couldn't get all of our ducks in a line, essentially. We couldn't get the structurals in place. So we're basically asking for a continuance till August to get everything in. But we sort of have a good plan that we want to execute, and it's regarding a second floor. We've had discussions with our neighbors; they're okay with it. We've kind of surveyed the area; it's not blocking anyone's view, and yeah. So we just wanted to socialize with you folks, see what the thoughts of that was, and then we can just get the structurals and submit everything for an August approval, obviously.
Well, I appreciate that. I think some of the concern that the board was having was just how do we how do we get around, increasing a incursion into the front yard area. So I'm looking forward to seeing the plans and thank you for thinking thoughtfully. And thank you for, reaching out to your neighbors and doing the legwork. It sounds like you're already doing all the right stuff.
Which is, we realize that the encroachment in the front could be a problem for the city. So we love Wayland. We want to stay here. We love the community, and it's just a natural expansion of the home. So, up is the way, but that changes a lot of plans from, estimates of cost to
Changes everything, right?
Yeah, it changes everything. Exactly. So we just couldn't get everything in line in the time that we needed to. So again, we're just asking for another month and make sure we can get everything in line, and that's it.
Wonderful.
Well, I guess that's wonderful. I think you may have to submit a new application. So I'm not, I would leave that to the chair or the building commissioner, but it strikes me you're making enough changes that it may need a new application or an amendment to the application. I don't know. Maybe the commissioner has some thoughts on it, but I don't think, I think there are enough changes that it wouldn't be.
I'd be interested to hear from the commissioner.
I mean, as we previously said, you could do your first amendment, but you really don't have to. You can actually just, we can probably add on to,
Okay.
because you haven't made like a final decision yet, so you could still,
They can supplement,
yes.
because I would,
It's the same
I'd
decision.
hate to make the applicants go through the
Yeah, that's
process
fine.
of the full
Appreciate that.
application. But submitting, the supplement, because, any decision we're gonna make, Mr. Commissioner, right, is gonna be subject to, we're gonna condition it to subject to the plan submitted. We'll just be
Right.
specific to the plans that are submitted, as part of the supplement.
Yeah.
Um,
Almost similar to like your other ones that go on several meetings.
yeah,
And they have time for the architect and the engineers to bring in new plans to the suggestions, similar to that. So they'd be, just
Okay.
a continuing of the same.
I would like to
application.
pursue, I would like to, go forward in that manner. Mr. Milan, we're not gonna make you, submit a new application. But just, when those new plans come, just make sure, that they're submitted well in advance, just so, we can get them circulated around to the board, so we can, efficiently, go through that evening and make sure that we can, we like to see things 7 days in advance. It's not that we sometimes don't accept, submissions, in shorter timeframes, but I think, if it's possible, get them in as soon as possible, just because that gives us more time. I think you've heard, we've waxed poetic about our woeful lives as volunteers here, but in all truth, it does allow us to review it. And if we're able to get a good review of the documents for which you want us to look at, then we're going to be able to, move more efficiently on the night of the hearing, and hopefully prevent, any further delays for you. I know you've been patient so far, and appreciate you guys going back and rethinking the process here.
Yeah,
I
we're I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off?
I'm sorry. I would just say that in terms of the application form, it may well be different provisions in the bylaw that you're looking at and different measurements or boxes on the application that are relevant. So you should just look over the application form and make sure that everything that applies to the new plans is filled out. And I think it would be a good idea to go into the building commissioner's office and just speak to the building commissioner before it's finalized, just to make sure everything is complete.
Thank you.
Well, and I
Mr.
think,
Yeah, we've oh, sorry, did I cut somebody off again? Apologies.
no, Mr. Milan, before, we just want to address Mr. Grumbeck's comment, because I think one of our concerns at the last meeting, if I'm remembering correctly, I think was that we didn't have a lot of information on that application page anyways. And I think that was one of the concerns we had. Maybe this is a wonderful opportunity just to submit that page that actually is fully filled out this time, because I don't think we had that we even had that information, Jim,
Exactly.
on the cover. So I think we're in probably, maybe for different reasons, we're probably in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, no,
And-
I appreciate it. Yeah, and unfortunately, Mr. Machado had made just an oversight on how he submitted the application, so he knows what the issue was, and it's corrected. And Mr. Grumbeck, we actually went ahead and we're keeping the room count exactly the same, so we're not changing everything gradually. We're just basically taking what we were doing before and just essentially putting it on top.
I think it's a great idea. I just
Thank
want
you.
to make sure you can sail through with no hitches.
Yeah, no, and we really appreciate that. So we will go ahead and do that and make sure that when we present to the board in August, that all our ducks are in line and that, obviously we can sail through. So again, we appreciate the time and, we'll,
And Mr. Milano, I think the only thing we have to do at this time is just take a roll call vote. You know, you've asked for the continuance. And I think that is for, what's the date in August? August 8th. And do we have anything on?
7:15.
We have 2 new cases. So you would be the 715 case, Mr. Milan. Does August 8th work for you?
absolutely.
Wonderful.
I would just suggest we figure out who was present last time, so we don't have a Mullinization issue depending on who's present for the August meeting. Mr. Milan, when were you here last?
Right in our agenda today. It is, the continuance was June 13th,
13.
June 13th.
right?
I was present.
I certainly was. We can review the meeting minutes though.
See,
and-
I have my notes here.
Could you?
How
Yeah,
many-
Manny,
how
if
many
you could
members?
13th, it was.
Hold on.
Josh,
We're-
Aida, Doug, Sean, myself, and Adam. I think we're all present at that meeting.
And Mr. Fitzpatrick was the only one that wasn't here.
And Tom wasn't here either.
So, Ms. Janice,
I'm sorry, I will not be at the August meeting. I will not be able to be at the August meeting.
Okay,
So-
so it's possible that if either Kevin or Tom is sitting, they would have to Mullinize.
yeah, and Jim, what I would suggest is we'll get that confirmed who was or who was not here from Manny, and then we'll circulate. Can we
Okay.
circulate all in the form? You know, to
Great.
those 2 individuals. And then
Continuation date.
I-
Continuation date, what is the?
June 13th. It's moving to August 8th. At 7:15. I move that we continue this application being application 2310 to August 8th at 7:15. Do I have a second?
Second,
Mr. Levine, thank you. We'll take it by roll call vote. Mr. Sarian,
Yes.
Mr. Levine,
Yes.
Mr. Hirsch,
aye.
Ms. Janice,
Aye.
Ms. Grumbeck.
Aye.
Myself, Joshua Warren, the chair. Aye, the ayes have it. It passes unanimously. Mr. Milan, I do appreciate your time and your patience, and your efforts. We look forward to seeing you on the. Yes, Manny.
Just for the applicant, if you can submit the supplemental material digitally, that would be better, easier to distribute to the board. If the plans are too large for a reason and you have to do them visual, if you can provide at least a week in advance to mail out to the board members so they have that time to review it as well.
Yeah, we can. We're targeting to get it done within the next 10 days. We just working with the structural engineer. That's our target. We hope to get it done as soon as possible, but it may go over a couple of days, but it should be well within the time frame that you folks needed.
Wonderful.
And then on a completely separate side note, I heard you guys looking for maybe some assistance with CBA. This obviously has nothing to do with this particular application, but I am a Wayland resident. I'm a proud Wayland resident, and I'm just wondering how I would go about throwing my hat in the ring for that.
Wow.
So, yeah, you would submit a letter of interest to
Okay.
the select board. And the select board, so we're an appointed board.
Yep.
And once you submit that, people will be in touch, and then they usually will set up an interview at some point. I do think that we just need to get through probably this.
Yeah, absolutely.
hearing.
Yeah.
But after that, I would encourage you to show your interest. We would love to have additional people on the board, and anybody that's willing would be wonderful to have the select board consider you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Great. So thanks.
Thank you.
We'll see each other in August then.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
It is 8:19, and it is time to see the 7:15 PM continued application of Joshua Fox, attorney agent on behalf of Herb Chambers owners to create service bays for customer drop off and additional storage. This property is located at 533 Boston Post Road, which is in the limited commercial zoning district. Case number 23-01, continued February 14th, 2023, March 21st, 2023, April 11th, 2023, May 30th, 2023, June 13th, 2023, and maybe to Thanksgiving of this year. Counselor, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I have recused myself. I'm going to be leaving the meeting if that's acceptable.
Please. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Grunberg.
Thank you all, panel, and good luck, Mr. Fox. Everybody stay safe. Manny, be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Josh Fox from Rollins and Fox again. Subsequent to our, I think it was 7/10. Oh, excuse me. It was our
June 13th?
June 13 meeting. We provided two submissions. The first was basically the sign off of the Board of Health, which is always a condition precedent to your decisions. And the second was a new plan set. That plan set showed two changes, the changes which we discussed at that last meeting, neither of which are really visible from the street. There's an outflow of drainage after treatment into the wetlands. We're pulling it back from the wetlands a few feet to accommodate a suggestion by peer review and conservation agent. And also there is a shared drive which leads from this Bentley et al. Dealership to the Jaguar Land Rover dealership in the back. That was 24 feet wide. We're narrowing that to 20 feet, consistent with the plans we submitted, what we discussed last week. I wish I could respectfully request closure this evening, but we haven't made the progress which we wanted to make with the Conservation Commission. We've got feedback from two peer reviewers there. We're addressing the questions that they've raised, and we haven't had real substantive feedback yet from the members of the Conservation Commission. So my concern is if we're to close with you guys and the Conservation Commission requires modification to the plan, I'm starting over with you guys. So my request instead is to respectfully ask for another continuance to the, August 8th meeting, possibly at 7:20.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Of course.
Can you just give us a little bit of background about meetings with the Conservation Commission and what you foresee down the road?
Sure. We think we have addressed all of the peer reviewer concerns. The way it works when you have peer reviewers is there's a back and forth, and you've got to submit everything 2 to 3 weeks before a hearing to give the peer reviewer an opportunity to respond and give their report to the Conservation Commission. So it takes a lot longer. And if we're a day late and we're $1 short, we're kicking that out. But we have had substantive conversations with them on, I think, at least 4 occasions.
You've appeared before them 4 times?
Correct. But it's all substantive discussion about peer review and with the conservation agent. So we really haven't gotten substantive input from the Conservation Commissioners yet.
So are you foreseeing at least 2 more sessions behind them?
We're hoping one more. We're hoping. We think we addressed the lingering concerns, which had to do with that outflow being too close to the wetlands, and actually it was maybe a few inches over the property into another property, which is also owned by an affiliate of Herb Chambers. But it would have the fact that there was an element to a drainage structure which was on another property was going to require re-notification and starting over. So we instead pulled back a little bit. And then again, in order to do that, the way we accomplished pulling that drainage structure back was by narrowing that driveway 4 feet. So we were able to pull it back 4 feet. So we've been addressing concerns along the way, but they've been concerns raised by Linda Hanson, the conservation agent, and the peer reviewer. And so our hope is that the Conservation Commission follows the guidance and sees that we've done all those things, but without having any substantive feedback, it's hard to be confident. So that's my concern.
When is your next meeting with Concom?
I believe it's next week.
Yeah, and I think our process typically doesn't wait for Concom, but I understand your particular concern if we're giving site plan approval. And if the site plans are substantively changing, how that affects us. And so, you know, I respectfully defer to your request. And I would be inclined to put that to a vote and accommodate you for that request.
Thank you.
So you'd want to come back in August?
Yes.
Wonderful. Discussion, questions, anybody? I would move that we would accept that request and put case number, what is it? 23-101, the first case of the year.
Hopefully not the last.
Continue that to August 8th at 7:20.
Go ahead, Adam.
Seconded,
Thank you, Mr. Hirsch. You're back on top.
finally.
We'll put that to roll call vote. Mr. Hirsch,
Aye,
Ms. Janice,
Aye.
Mr. Sarian,
Yes, I,
Mr. Levine.
Aye.
And myself, the chair, Josh Warren, aye. Passes unanimously. We'll see you on August 8th.
Thank
very
you. I'm
much.
sorry you have to keep seeing me.
No, it's a pleasure.
Thanks.
Wonderful. Further discussion issues that we have tonight, or are we looking, I will accept motions as well.
move to close the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
I will second that myself, okay? Wonderful. I do appreciate the robust conversations and discussion that everybody gave. We'll take this by roll call vote. Mr. Sarian,
yes.
Mr. Levine.
Aye.
Mr. Hirsch,
Aye.
Ms. Janice,
Aye.
myself, still the chair. I thank you all and all have a good night.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.